Hello, and welcome to Ghosts in Our Genes, the Neanderthal DNA Haunting Us, brought to you by the International Institute of Genealogical Studies. This is the DNA and Genetic Genealogy virtual meeting. And if you'd like to learn more about the Institute, you can find us at genealogicalstudies.com. Now, before we start, we're going to be talking about uploading our DNA to different places. So before you do that, I just want to take a moment to remind you it's very important before you upload your DNA to any website, carefully check the privacy and other terms and conditions on the site. I call it the big five. Who, who are they? Who will have access to your DNA? What will they do with your DNA? When can I remove my DNA? Or how long will they store it? Where is it stored? Where are they located in the world? Why? What's the purpose of their site and their activities? And remember, anytime you do anything with DNA, results may have surprises. So don't look for anything you might not want to know. Now, this presentation, we're going to talk a little bit about who the Neanderthals were, Neanderthal DNA, then talk about some tools and ways to ascertain how much Neanderthal DNA you have and what it means if you have Neanderthal DNA. So, the watershed moment in Neanderthal DNA was in 2010 when, for the first time, a draft sequence of the whole Neanderthal genome was sequenced. Prior to that, they'd only studied the mtDNA, which is the maternal DNA of Neanderthals. mtDNA is the kind of DNA that a woman passes to her sons and daughters, but it only goes down the maternal line. And what is different in this study is that they did the whole genome of Neanderthal DNA. And this study now is about 15 years old, and there's much, much more research and data now in different samples. But I'd like to talk about this study because it was very much a watershed moment. So, who are the Neanderthals? They're extinct human relatives who lived in Europe and Western Asia anywhere from 400,000 to 30,000 years ago. They adapted to cold, they had stocky bodies, large noses, strong muscles, and thick brow ridges. They were a different kind of human, in other words, the human's closest relatives. So they split from the modern human lineage 500,000 to 600,000 years ago. And research that's evolved since this time gives different time frames. And they lived alongside early Homo sapiens, the current humans, us, in parts of Eurasia. Now, why do they matter? They matter because they're our closest evolutionary relatives, and they left a genetic legacy in modern non-African humans. So the paleontological samples in the study I mentioned earlier were 21 Neanderthal bones from the Vindija cave in Croatia. Now, high-quality DNA to sequence the genome was extracted from 3 samples dated to 38,000 to 44,000 years ago. And the Neanderthal genome was compared with 5 modern human genomes that were sequenced for comparison. One was from the San people of southern Africa, the Yoruba people of West Africa, Han Chinese, French, and Papuan people. And each of these allowed a detection of shared versus unique DNA with each genome and the Neanderthal genome. Now, the population separation estimated at 270,000 to 440,000 years ago reflects the time when the common ancestral population of both modern human and Neanderthals split into 2 isolated groups. Neanderthals who moved into Europe and Asia, and modern humans who remained in Africa. And they stopped interbreeding because they were separated by geography, deserts, distance, one group evolved into Neanderthals in Europe and Western Asia. The other remained in Africa, eventually evolving into Homo sapiens, modern humans. After this split, they each evolved separately for hundreds of thousands of years. This is their time of genetic separation when gene flow stopped in their core homelands. However, later, Neanderthals and humans, Homo sapiens, would meet again in the Middle East and the Levant approximately 50 to 60,000 years ago. Or even possibly Central Asia as humans, Homo sapiens, moved eastward. Gene flow happened before widespread migration into Europe or East Asia of Homo sapiens. So this is why non-Africans share significantly more DNA with Neanderthals than Africans do. It suggests interbreeding occurred after humans left Africa and likely took place before Eurasians' populations split from one another. Now, non-African populations have approximately 0% of Neanderthal DNA, and Neanderthal ancestry is evenly distributed among Europeans, East Asians, and Papuans. This is from the 2010 study. So how much Neanderthal DNA do modern humans have? The study I mentioned in the preprint, the 2010 study, suggested 1 to 4% of modern human DNA is from Neanderthals. And another study in 2014 said East Asians had between 2.3 to 2.6%, and Europeans had between 1.8 to 2.4%, which goes along with another study in 2013 that said East Asians have 20 to 40% more Neanderthal ancestry than Europeans. But then in 2020, there was a new study which identified apparent Neanderthal ancestry in African individuals. A different technique called IBD mix, which detects archaic ancestry without using a modern human reference population. So with this technique, they found that African individuals have a stronger Neanderthal ancestry signal than previously thought. And they believe this can explain that was truly genuine Neanderthal ancestry due to migrations back to Africa, predominantly from ancestral Europeans, and gene flow into Neanderthals from an earlier dispersing group of humans out of Africa. They also found variation in non-African Neanderthal ancestry has been overestimated. And they believe, like the earlier study, that there was nearly uniform levels in non-African populations. And the reason the earlier studies found differences in Neanderthal ancestry between East Asians and Europeans was because they didn't take into account this back migration. And this map here is the map of where Neanderthals lived. In many of these locations, fossils have been found. So you can see it's mostly Europe and the Middle East. Now, so this kind of gives you an idea of the time frame and where humans and Neanderthals intermixed. But what does it mean if you have Neanderthal DNA? It means you may have inherited certain genes and traits from the Neanderthals. Now, there's many different companies, and you can find them online, that will give you different kinds of Neanderthal DNA reports, some for free, some paid. Now, one which I think is worth mentioning is if you test 23andMe, their regular autosomal DNA test, they will tell you your percentage of Neanderthal DNA. For example, they'll tell you less than 2%, more than 2%, 3%. They'll also tell you if you have more Neanderthal DNA than 32% of customers or 10% of other customers. And it's nice because it gives you a full report. It tells you markers where you have two Neanderthal genetic variants, which means you inherited the same variant from both your parents. It'll tell you where you have one Neanderthal variant from one parent. It'll tell you where on the chromosome this variant is. And for example, on your chromosome, it's different letters. So it'll tell you if you have two copies of G's, they are from the Neanderthals. and it means you're less likely to have a fear of heights. Now, there are literally hundreds of genes that modern humans have from Neanderthals that affect many, many traits, but they do fall into certain categories, such as immunity, skin and hair, metabolism, reproduction, and neurological and behavioral. For example, there are some Neanderthal genes that they say might make you more likely to smoke cigarettes. Now, in something which some of you may remember from 2020, they found that the major genetic risk factor for severe COVID-19 is inherited from Neanderthals. This was a study that made the news quite a lot in 2020. Now, you have to remember when you're dealing with ancient DNA, two things. First of all, Joseph Chang, who is a statistician at Yale, talks about a recent common ancestor of all present day individuals. At some point, we reach a generation in which some individuals are common ancestors, meaning everybody alive is their descendant, and some are extinct, having no present day individuals as their descendants. That is, everyone at this point who is not extinct is a common ancestor of everybody alive. This condition persists forever as we trace back in time. So when you're looking at ancient DNA samples, they're very, very much, in a sense, could be an ancestor of every single person on the planet. So, and what does it mean if you match an ancient DNA sample? It doesn't mean it's your direct ancestor. It means that it could be, but probably not. It means you share an ancestor somehow with them. And very small segments may not be identical by descent that you share a common ancestor. So we're going to keep that in mind. So what we're going to do now, at the website GEDmatch, which you can upload your DNA from any company to, they have a kit that is a kit based on an ancient Neanderthal sample. A man named Felix Emmanuel made a synthetic kit based on the DNA from the study of this Neanderthal. His website is no longer online actively, but you can find it at Web Archive. And the GEDmatch kit, this is the number, and this is from the Altai Neanderthal, which was in a cave in Siberia. So what you do is when you upload your DNA to GEDmatch, on the right-hand side, and after your DNA is processed, it takes about a day or two, you see free tools. And one of them is one-to-one autosomal DNA comparison. This is what the tool looks like. Now, the kit number 2, you should put the number that I showed you earlier of the Neanderthal kit. And here you can put in your kit or the kit of the person that you want to compare to the Neanderthal sample. And now here is what's the segment size. DNA segments are measured in centimorgans, and the default value is 7 centimorgans. However, segments get smaller and smaller as they're passed down through time. So if you put in 7 centimorgans, you may not have any DNA matches because these are so far back. But if you put in something very small, like 0.5 centimorgans, 1 centimorgans, you'll literally match all of the ancient DNA samples, or you really will go back and way far to match a certain kit. So I suggest, because as we spoke about earlier, it's the Chang's principle. So I suggest setting 3 centimorgans as a range, and you could try higher and lower. So I put in 3 centimorgans and I hit compare. And this is what it shows you: base pairs with a full match, base pairs with a half match, base pairs with no match in red. So for 3 centimorgans, while I did have these colored areas, no shared DNA segments were found, which meant I didn't have any segments. This was my kid, 3 centimorgans or more with this Neanderthal DNA sample. Now, I wanted to look at the archaic DNA matches. Now, the archaic DNA matches is a list of synthetic kits at GEDmatch, where a kit you put in is compared to all the archaic DNA match kits. So you go back to the first page, and under free tools, you click on archaic DNA matches. And this is what it looks like. Now, you put in the kit number that you want to compare to all the archaic DNA samples. Again, it sets 0.5 centimorgan. I think that is a little too little because, again, you're going to get too many matches. So, again, I tried with three centimorgans. And here you can see in the list, the first is Neanderthal. I didn't match that Neanderthal. I didn't match the Neanderthal who was in the study I mentioned earlier. And here's another Neanderthal on the bottom. And you could see there's different ancient DNA samples, some from the Bell Beaker period. So at 3 centimorgans, my main match was this sample from Hungary from more than 7,200 years ago. And what you see here is on which chromosome you match them. There's a little tally mark, chromosome 1, chromosome 2. So I had a match segment with this sample in Hungary on chromosome 2, and I believe on chromosome 12. And the kit number is to the left here. It starts with an F. So what I wanted to see about this match is if I raised the centimorgans to 5 centimorgans, would I still be a match with this ancient DNA sample from Hungary? And I wasn't. As you can see, I didn't match it at all. So the next thing, to explore this a little bit more, I took the kit number from here and I went back to the first page, the 1-to-1 autosomal DNA comparison. I put in the kit number from Hungary. I put in my kit number. And what it showed was that there was a segment of 5 centimorgans. So it must have been borderline. And it showed this was the segment on chromosome 2 and this position. This is the starting point, and this is the ending point, and you can see it here. So I wanted to explore this segment a little bit more. So there's a website. It is the Genomics Institute of the University of California, Santa Cruz. And what you do is you go to their website at this address, you click on genomes, you click on 38 or 37, depending on which build for example, from Ancestry or whatever company you uploaded your DNA from. And mine was build 37. So I clicked on that. And then what happens is on the top, you take the search position like this, chromosome 2, the beginning and the ending, and you put it into the search box. And you click go. And here you see all the genes that are at this segment, possibilities, and you could click on them and it'll tell you what these genes are for. And what was very interesting is I also wanted to paint this segment on my gene. So I did a few months ago, and you could see it in the International Institute of Genealogical Studies YouTube videos about DNA painting at DNA Painter website. It is where you work with your DNA matches to figure out exactly who your common ancestor is, and then you figure out where on the gene you match this person. So let's say you and this person are descended from your same great-grandparents or great-great-grandparents, then you color on your gene that point. And I'll give you an example. So what I did is this is my sample chromosome map. It's not my actual chromosome map. And I decided to paint the Hungarian sample. Now, I clicked, when you do this at the DNA painter site, it says paint a new match. And I went to, and this is the screen. I don't yet know how I'm connected to this match, which means I don't know if the match is maternal or paternal, because you have on your chromosome map, one, you inherit half your chromosomes from your mother, half from your father. So if you know if it's maternal or paternal, you can put that here. But I don't know if I could have even inherited that Hungarian segment from the ancient Hungarian sample from both parents. So I put, I don't know yet how I'm connected to this match. I wrote Hungarian sample is the name, and that's the name of the group, so to speak. Now, prior, I have two family lines, Zusha and Rojo Poloni, and Yankel and Yederveves. These are fictional family lines, but this is what it would look like, let's say, if I mark these as my great-grandparents and one maternal side, one paternal side, and you can see they're on different places is on my chromosome, and this is where I share DNA with people who I match, so I know that it's probably came from these ancestors. So I added the Hungarian sample to my map, and it looked like this. So now you could see it's overlapping here underneath. You could see it overlaps both sides because, as I wrote, I don't know if I inherited the Hungarian sample from a maternal or paternal or both. So, and you could see here, when I clicked on chromosome 2, you get a bigger view, and it shows where the Hungarian sample overlaps both these matches. But I noticed something very interesting up here. There's a little gray and white stripe. What does that mean? This means it's a common pile-up area. What's a pile-up area? This is known as a pile-up area if someone only matches on these segments, then the match might be very far back. Pile-up areas can vary for different populations and ethnicities, and it gives you an article to read at the ISOG Wiki, which is a wonderful wiki to read about everything DNA oriented. So this is what it says. This is a study from Ancestry DNA. They analyzed the matches of over 500,000 US customers and found that in certain regions of the genome, hundreds and sometimes thousands of people were predicted to share DNA with each other. The problem was particularly pronounced in customers of Jewish ancestry and in some people of Hispanic descent. The problem was observed across all ethnic groups. They concluded that these regions of identical DNA were likely to be attributed to a shared ethnic history rather than a recent common ancestor. So what was very, very interesting about this sample is that it's found in many, many people. So it could even be that it's found in certain ethnic groups who perhaps shared an ancestor very far back, even further than 7,000 years ago with this sample. So that's why I often recommend painting your chromosome to get to know your DNA better. And it's something else that's very, very important. Remember, just because you have a gene for a trait does not mean it will be expressed. For example, if you, let's say you have a gene which predisposes you to smoking cigarettes, you may never smoke a cigarette. The gene inheritance is a very, very complex topic. How and will it be expressed? But, and something else very important is if you ever find anything concerning as you're working with your traits, speak to your doctor or a medical geneticist. So I'd like to thank you for attending Ghosts in Our Genes, the Neanderthal DNA Haunting Us, from the International Institute of Genealogical Studies. This has been the DNA and Genetic virtual meeting, and I hope you'll check out the Institute at https genealogicalstudies.com.